We need to bring in right now New York Times columnist and author of Hot, Flat, and Crowded, Why We Need a Green Revolution, and How It Can Renew America. We speak, of course, of Thomas Friedman. Tom, thank you so much for being with us.
Great to be with you guys. I'm sorry, though, it's not in person here.
I know. Next time we've got to be there.
For sure.
So you have, for such a long time, talked about the issue that nobody's talked about, and that is all of the problems, all of the challenges that energy dependence has caused us. In this new book, you talk about how it's creating a perfect storm that spells bad news for America. Talk about that.
Well, Joe, what the title really connotes, Hot, Flat, and Crowded, is that we are in the middle of a perfect storm of global warming, global flattening, which is really just my metaphor for the rise of middle classes all over the world, from India to China to Brazil to Russia, who are beginning to consume energy like Americans. And finally, global population growth, the crowded part, because we're going from a world of, we're going to have another billion people on the planet in just 12 more years. And when you put hot, flat, and crowded together, it's really going to drive every big resource energy trend around the world, not to mention petro-dictatorship and a lot of other things.
Well, you know, Tom, the thing we've been hearing on the campaign trail is that both of these candidates have been talking about how America needs to be energy independent. And if you elect me, I'm going to make America energy independent. We're not even close in terms of years or decades of being energy independent, are we?
No, we're not even close. And, you know, really the focus of my book, Joe, is not so much energy independence, because that is a shimmer. That was something I thought about years ago, but I really have come to terms that that's really not the focus. The focus is to see who can really launch the next great global industry, which is going to be something I call ET, energy technology. And energy technology is going to revolve around the renewable industry, wind, solar, geothermal, and stuff we haven't even invented yet. That needs to be our focus. And if we get that right, maybe some energy independence will follow.
Yeah, and let me ask you really quickly. You've talked before about how the different ages, the agricultural age, the industrial age, the information age, and then you talked, I believe it was in your last book, about, I think you called it the talent age, the skill sets that Americans seem to have. And where you say, okay, I've got this crazy idea, I'm going in my garage, I'm going to create a company and call it Microsoft. Shouldn't we be positioned, if our leaders will only focus on it, shouldn't we be positioned to thrive in this new environment?
You know, it's really one of the big themes of the book, Joe, which is that if you look at America today, if I were to draw a picture of America today, it'd be like the space shuttle taking off. All this thrust from below. We still have this incredibly innovative and entrepreneurial culture, but the booster rocket, which is our government, doesn't work anymore. It's cracked and leaking energy, and the pilots in the cockpit are fighting over the flight plan, and as a result, we can't achieve escape velocity to get into the next orbit, the next big industrial revolution, which is going to be energy technology.
Tom, I'm reading from your column yesterday, subtly titled "Making America Stupid."
We get to read our own headlines.
I want to read an excerpt from it. This is about the campaign here. Quote, "It's a campaign now built on turning everything possible into a cultural wedge issue, including even energy policy, no matter how stupid it makes the voters and no matter how much it might weaken America." I respected John McCain's willingness to support the troop surge in Iraq, even if it was going to cost him the Republican nomination. Now the same guy who would not sell his soul to win his party's nomination, ready to sell every piece of his soul to win the presidency. We were talking off air about the frustration last week, a week-long discussion of lipstick on a pig at this critical moment in our history. What do we do to change the conversation, and how important is it that we change the conversation?
Well, you know, Willie, I was really struck watching actually your sister show, Today's Show, earlier this morning, and they had Matt Lauer at the hurricane site in Galveston, and they had Meredith Vieira on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. And all I could think of was Hurricane Hank Paulson, Hurricane Ike. And we're now battered right between these two hurricanes. And what are we going to need for both? It's only government that's going to save us from Hurricane Hank and Hurricane Ike. Not big government, but smart government. To sit back now and say, well, let the climate do it or let the market do it, it's all going to just be fine. I don't think people feel that way anymore. And I think when historians look back, I hope this isn't a real meltdown, the beginning of Armageddon, and they look back, what were people talking about the week before Armageddon, and they discover it was lipstick on a pig. That would not make us look real good.
Well, you talk about this thrust from below. The will is there. People are ready. We understand there's a problem. What has to happen for the next president to get that shuttle off the ground.
Well, one of the problems we have today is our government doesn't work. It cannot solve any big multi-generational problem anymore. And we've got to find a way to get strong government back to harness the natural energy we have here. If you just leave it go by itself, you'll get things like this market meltdown. It needs to be shaped with the right regulations and standards, whether it's in the financial sector or in the energy sector.
Mika?
Okay, Tom. Andrea Mitchell has a question here from Washington. Andrea.
Hey, Tom. Taking a look at this meltdown and what's been happening this weekend and the global slowdown, how does that affect China and India, two countries that you have covered so extensively? How will that play into our own economic prosperity and our own, ability to export?
Well, let's talk about China. I was just there, Andrea. There was a lot of talk early on in this crisis about delinkage, that somehow they were going to be delinked from us. And all I could think of is, yeah, right, in a flat world, they're going to go off and be delinked. I don't think so. They're waking up with a hangover this morning, too, because just think of how many things the folks who are buying low-cost Chinese goods, whether it's tennis shoes or sneakers, or high-priced Chinese goods, whether it's electronics, they're not going to have the cash to go back and get those goods. At the same time, when we look around, if you look at all the financial reports this morning, what do they say? They say we need liquidity for our system. We're going to need someone to come in and hopefully buy the Lehmans or buy the Merrill Lynches, the next ones down the road. Who can do that? China. And so we basically, what have we been doing for the last few years? We've been borrowing money from China to give it to Saudi Arabia. We just kind of run it through our banking system. That's not called economics or savings. That's called money laundering, basically. And that's what we've been doing with our economy. And we're going to have to get away from that. And we're going to have a serious conversation with China. We need them today.
And guys, the interesting thing about this is we've just got statements this morning from the McCain and Obama camps about the financial meltdown. And, McCain says we need better regulation, we need reform. Obama says you can't blame this on McCain, but it reflects the philosophy he subscribes to. But you don't see any big new ideas in either.
Interesting. That's a good point to look at their statements.
Tom, we have policy leaders on, the candidates themselves on, and we talk about energy independence. We talk about getting smart, getting liftoff, using your analogy. Let me ask you, how far away are we? Let's say, the government decides tomorrow, we're going to raise CAFE standards not to 40, but to 45 miles per gallon. We're going to invest in clean technology in an aggressive way, our new Manhattan project, or respond like we did to Sputnik. We're going to drill. If the Republicans want to drill, fine. It may not help us for more than a couple of weeks, but we'll do that. We are going to do everything nuclear. We're going to build 10 nuclear plants over the next decade. If we do all of these things, how far are we away from borrowing money from China to give it to Saudi Arabia?
Joe, I can't give you an exact year, but it would mark a fundamental transition. If I could wave a magic wand, what I would be doing is forming, I'd call him maybe Secretary of State George Shultz. He's a great energy guy, maybe Warren Buffett. And I'd bring them together in Washington, and I'd say, I'm creating the Shultz-Buffett Commission, folks, okay? I want you guys to go off, come up with the right energy plan that you've just talked about, Joe, the right taxes, incentives, price signals, regulation standards, to really stimulate the market, because only the market, there's only one thing bigger than Mother Nature, and that's Father Profit. Only the market can create the energy kind of innovation we need at the scale we need. And then what I do, Joe, I'd bring their plan to Congress. It'd be just like a base closing commission. Ladies and gentlemen of the Congress, it's an up and down vote, no amendments, no earmarks. We're going to have a serious energy plan, vote up or down on this. That's what we need.
Tom Friedman, Pat Buchanan here.
Hey, Pat.
Tom, you seem to say we need government to do this, but the truth of the matter is it not? Government can't balance its budget today. It can't end the trade deficit. It can't win our wars. It can't control the border. It is failing. It fouled up Katrina. Are we relying on an institution which itself is failing the country? And how much reliance can you put on a government that doesn't seem to be working at all?
Well, Pat, I'd say two things to that. It's an important question. I'd say two things. One is, you're certainly right, government isn't working. We've got to solve that problem. But when I talk about government in the energy context, I'm actually a free market guy. I believe, you really need the market to drive this innovation, not a Manhattan Project. Government's role is to shape that market with the right prices, standards, and regulations, and then get out of the way. But markets alone, if you just don't tend them and shape them like a garden, you'll get the mess you've got today in the financial markets. Government's role is to shape the market, then then let it launch that space shuttle of innovation and get out of the way.
All right, as you said earlier, and I actually wrote it down, I loved it, not big government, smart government. On this issue, God knows we haven't had that in some time. Tom Friedman, thank you so much. We can't wait to see you in studio.
Thanks so much, you guys.
Thank you.
All right, the book is Hot, Flat, and Crowded. Need to go out and get it.
Absolutely.
It is a critical book, one of the most critical books written this campaign season.